Hell's Angels live dangerously, and the worst enemies lurk within their own ranks.
We simply try to suppress this situation in order to go through a normal daily routine.
For years, a generational, cultural, and violent battle has raged among the Angels.
How do you want to die?
I hope I don't die at all, as long as no one shoots at me.
A month later, this rocker will be dead. The bosses also fear for their power.
Did you order a hit?
Certainly not. That's a made-up story.
Hanover has long been the secret capital of the Hells Angels in Germany. Frank Hanebuth dominates the local nightlife district and reaches far into the middle of upper-class society. When the best-known Hells Angel gets married outside Hanover in the summer of 2017, the whole event takes on the character of a folk festival. The former professional boxer Frank Hanebuth is the most iconic figure of the Hells Angels. With his gang behind him, he has built up an empire of pubs, brothels, and sports studios. At the same time, he has the best contacts in civil society. Hanebuth can be a gangster and a gourmet. Very few people in this business can do that. But the rocker scene has changed radically in recent years, and Frank Hanebuth has not endured this development unharmed.
Frank Hanebuth is definitely a figurehead of the club. He is without a doubt the best-known member in Germany.
Hanebuth is the interface between underground and bourgeoisie. When it comes to birthdays, his lawyer Gotz von Fromberg joins in the celebrations. He was also best man to Gerhard Schroeder, the former Chancellor of Germany. Hanebuth creates a Hells Angels world of experience with his own beer, cigarettes, and Harley sound. He becomes the mayor of nightlife. Tens of thousands of people flock to the parties in the red light district, sponsored by Beck's and the Bild newspaper, and approved by the city. The police can only look on powerlessly.
A certain role was certainly played by the fact that we were not able to prove any specific crimes of a particular kind. He has also established himself here economically quite strongly. Thus, it was difficult to push him back.
Will Frank Hanebuth be able to continue to stroll through Germany so freely in the future? And how does he deal with the internal tension in his gang? Will he be willing to compromise? Or will he defend his position as the most powerful Hells Angel in Europe without mercy? The conflict between Bandidos and Hells Angels is a battle of brotherhoods and brutal violence. These two outlaw motorcycle clubs are locked in a deadly struggle for dominance and territory, with each side willing to do whatever it takes to come out on top. It's a clash of titans that has left a trail of bloodshed and destruction in its wake, and shows no signs of cooling down anytime soon. When the war between the Hells Angels and the Bandidos began in 2007, Hanebuth was also targeted by investigators. At that time, the Hells Angels recruited many young men in order to quickly increase their own strength. This was about to backfire on Hanebuth. One of these so-called supporters, the killer Stefan R., testified as a key witness in order to reduce his own sentence for human trafficking. Allegedly, the missing Turkish Tekin B had been tortured and finally brutally executed by the Hells Angels in a car repair shop.
Did you order a hit?
Certainly not. That's a made-up story.
The key witness gets a reduced sentence, although the police find no evidence to support his statements. It later turns out the man was unreliable. Other police authorities had warned of this in advance. During a raid on Hanebuth's estate, the GSG-9 shoots his dog.
They didn't have to come there with the GSG-9. The detectives from Hanover also know that I will face any responsibility if there is a problem, if there is something. It's enough to ring the bell. I come out and face my responsibility.
Behind the tough facade of the rocker boss, he's probably not only worried about the death of his dog. With power struggles within his gang, the law breathing down his neck, and betrayal within his own ranks, the leader's life is at stake. With his life on the line, how far will the leader go to protect his interest in money, power, and status? What risks is he willing to take in order to ensure his survival? In 2013, Hanebuth moves from Hanover to Mallorca, a Mediterranean island of Spain. Rumor has it that the leader of the Hells Angels was tired of the cold and gray streets of Hanover and wanted to start fresh with a new professional foothold. But was the beautiful weather, palm trees, and sand beaches really the only reason for Hanebuth's move? Or is this just yet another move to gain more money, power, and glory? Will his arrival on the Spanish island lead to international conflict and bloodshed in Europe's biggest party city? The sunny beaches of Mallorca seemed like the perfect place to establish his reign of terror even further, far away from the watchful eyes of law enforcement. But Hanebuth's plans don't go exactly as planned. Shortly after he arrives, he is arrested by the Spanish police at a friend's finca. The charges range from drug trafficking and money laundering to prostitution. Hanebuth goes into custody. He leaves behind a power vacuum among the Angels in Germany. Spanish authorities investigate for 3 years, but the results are not enough to charge Hanebuth. In September 2016, he is allowed to travel to Hanover for a week, as his 52nd birthday is coming up. On his 50th, he was still in a Spanish high-security prison.
It's nice to be back home. We'll be fine. Today we're going full throttle. Today is birthday. Full throttle, extraordinary, everything that goes. And then we'll go on.
In the district, Frank Hanebuth is welcomed by hundreds of Hells Angels, friends, and business partners. It is also a return to his roots. This is where the teacher's son started as a pub landlord more than 30 years ago and boxed his way to the top of the European Hells Angels. The power struggle in the biker scene goes into the next round. Will the boss be able to stand his ground after his time away? Will Hanebuth's return to Hanover lead to a new era of Hells Angels dominance? Or will his enemies finally take him down for good? As a group that prizes loyalty and brotherhood above all else, the Hells Angels have a long history of punishing those who betray their trust or step out of line in any way. But how far does this brotherhood really go? What happens when wealth and power are more important than honor and code? Maybe even more important than the life of another Hells Angel. Andre Sommer, a former hooligan from East Berlin, experiences firsthand that things are often not very brotherly in rocker brotherhoods.
A Hells Angels means to me, let's say, a free-spirited rebel. But of course you provoke and shock in a well-mannered society with such behavior.
At the time, his president is one of the most powerful Hell Angels ever, Holger Bossen, nicknamed Hako. In 2008, he was expelled from the club for allegedly embezzling money. Bossen wanted to return to the club, and Andre Sommer wanted to prevent that.
Hako is said to have stolen from the club. Is that why he was kicked out?
No comment.
On June 10, 2012, a killer armed with a Sig Sauer caliber 9mm is on his way to Zingsterstrasse in the East Berlin district of Hohenschönhausen. This is where the rocker president always parked his motorcycle. Out of the bushes steps Oleg Cherkasov, a 36-year-old Ukrainian, and shoots. The first shot misses the heart by only half an inch and injures the pericardium. Further shots to the chest pierce the 400-pound man. The physical shock reaction fails to appear. Sommer is still conscious and lucky again. The numerous large blood vessels are unharmed. The next life-threatening shot hits him in the abdomen and liver. The projectile misses the abdominal aorta by only 2 centimeters. Probably the last shot hits the severely injured man in the 12th thoracic vertebra. 1 centimeter further and the spinal cord would have been severed. The result would be paralysis. Holger Bossen and Michael W., nicknamed Russian Michael, were behind the murder. Bossen admitted the accusation to investigators. Allegedly, Sommer only should be taught a lesson. Holger Bossen is sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attempted incitement to murder. Andre Sommer recovered surprisingly well from the brutal attack and enjoys an even higher reputation than before. But what happens when the disputes of individual Hells Angels become whole troop movements within the club? How far will veteran members go to defend their power against newcomers? And how many bloodthirsty rockers do you need for a coup? For about 10 years, many men with a migration background have flocked to the Hells Angels. In the Frankfurt chapter of the Hell Angels, Aygun Muçuk, a Turk, is one of the first members with foreign roots. The leader of the Frankfurt Angels is a man who is said to have made it as a millionaire in the underground, through a mixture of street smart and ruthlessness. His name is Walter Burkhardt. Because of his past as a butcher, he is known only as Schnitzel Walter. 2014. Aygun Muçuk has gathered dissatisfied rockers around him. He wants to open his own Angels branch. Schnitzel Walter initially has nothing against Muçuk's expansion, but then he changes his mind and deprives Muçuk of lucrative bouncer jobs for brothels and trendy clubs. It comes to a showdown at Frankfurt's Katana Club. 40 men, led by Muçuk, storm the place. Police investigation reveals one of Schnitzel's men shoots at Muçuk, who survives only by luck. Angels shoot at angels. An unprecedented event, but supposedly all quite harmless.
In every big family there are quarrels. And then at the door also quarrel happened. Muçuk's power is based primarily in the immigrant milieu.
He has rallied around him new gangs like the Ottomans or the Guerrilla Nation. At a boxing event in Offenbach, he publicly presents his allies.
Good people are always good friends, right? We know them. We know everybody right now.
These men are his life insurance policy with the Angels. Police call these troops rocker-like groups.
You can strengthen your own troops numerically, and also in terms of presence on the street, without having to treat them as members in the strictest sense. With all the associated regulations, namely support in case of dispute, injury, detention, etc.
Muçuk is also the talk at the so-called World Run of the Hells Angels. In 2016, Hells Angels from all over the world will meet in Warsaw. The rockers want to discuss how to continue in the club. Specifically, they will also discuss Aygun Muçuk, who is said to have broken the rules once again. But Muçuk is pardoned, once again. After his pardon, he greets police officers who know the scene, although this is forbidden according to the rules of the rockers.
There is actually a rule. No communication with the police.
Any problems?
Jakieś problemy z policją do tej pory?
No.
Żadnych problemów.
No problems.
The rule is very different. You have to read those better.
It's scenes like this that make the old men in the Hells Angels clubs boil. Muçuk simply won't be disciplined. He ignores the Hells Angels rules that have been in place for decades. In Berlin, Muçuk attends a funeral of the new gang Guerrilla Nation. The fact that it competes directly with the Berlin Hells Angels, that it has even come to clashes, bothers Muçuk little. As a Hells Angel from the Frankfurt region, Muçuk is not allowed to look for supporters in Berlin. That disturbs the interests of the Berlin Angels. Nevertheless, Muçuk even leads the funeral march in Berlin. The rocker boss spends 20 minutes at the cemetery, time enough to think about death himself.
How do you want to die?
I hope I don't die at all, as long as no one shoots at me.
Und den türkisch geprägten Hells Angels aus Gießen fand heute Morgen vorerst einen traurigen Höhepunkt. Aygun Muçuk, der Anführer der Hells Angels in Gießen, wurde tot im Clubheim.
His killers ambushed Muçuk in front of the rocker clubhouse. The 45-year-old was shot 17 times at close range. To this day, the murder remains unsolved.